The city was always moving, filled with people who walked fast, drove fast, and seemed to live fast. But for her, the days felt slow, stretched out like a long road with no clear end. She was a young girl, maybe 17 or 18, though the hardship she carried on her face often made her seem older. Her life had taken a turn she never imagined, and now she was left with no roof, no family nearby, and no place to call home. Most mornings, she woke up on a park bench or under the shelter of a bus stop. Her few belongings fit into one old backpack, its straps worn thin from being carried everywhere. Inside it were small things: a couple of shirts, a notebook with faded pages, and a pair of shoes she no longer wore because the soles were broken. That was all she owned in the world. Despite her struggles, she wasn't the kind of girl who gave up easily. She had learned to survive. Sometimes she would go to the public library, not just for warmth but also to lose herself in books. Reading gave her comfort, made her forget hunger for a while, and reminded her that life could be bigger than her current situation. But the nights were the hardest. The cold air wrapped around her like ice, and the city noises never stopped. Cars honked, people shouted, and sometimes the streets felt unsafe. To find a little peace, she often walked down to the lake that stretched quietly on the edge of the city. The lake was like a secret world of its own, away from the traffic and lights. During the day, families came with children, couples walked holding hands, and joggers circled the water's edge. At night, however, it grew still and lonely, reflecting the stars above. She would sit there, hugging her knees, and watch the ripples spread across the dark water. The lake gave her something she could not find anywhere else: a sense of calm. Even when her stomach growled from hunger, or her hands shook from the cold, the lake made her feel she was not entirely forgotten. Sometimes she even whispered her thoughts to the water, almost as if it could listen and understand her. Her days followed the same rhythm. She searched for food wherever she could, sometimes from shelters, sometimes from kind strangers, and sometimes just by waiting near bakeries at closing time, hoping they would throw away unsold bread. She had grown used to being ignored by people passing by. Most of them avoided her eyes, walking quickly as if her existence made them uncomfortable. But she didn't blame them; she knew everyone had their own problems. Still, the silence of being unseen often hurt more than the hunger. Yet, inside her, there was a quiet spark. She believed that life was not meant to be lived only in sadness. She remembered happier times: school days when she laughed with friends, afternoons spent drawing in her notebook, and the smell of her mother's cooking. Those memories kept her going. Even when her present was dark, her past reminded her that light once existed, and maybe one day it could return. One late afternoon, she sat by the lake watching the sun sink low. The sky turned golden, and the water mirrored the colors like melted fire. She pulled her jacket tighter around herself, though it was too thin to keep her warm. Around her, the world seemed peaceful, but inside her heart, she felt the familiar weight of loneliness. She wondered where she would sleep that night. Would it be another bus stop? Would the security guard chase her away again? These questions circled her mind every evening. As the shadows grew longer, she noticed the large mansion on the other side of the lake. It stood tall, its windows glowing warmly as the lights came on inside. She often stared at it from afar, imagining what it must feel like to live in such a place. Perhaps a family was inside, sitting around a big dining table with plates full of food. Perhaps laughter filled the halls, and warm fires burned in the fireplace. She didn't envy them with bitterness; instead, she simply wished she could one day have a home too, not necessarily a mansion, but just a place where she could feel safe and loved. The mansion became like a symbol to her, something she always noticed each time she came to the lake. It reminded her that life had many sides. Some people lived in comfort, while others, like her, struggled to survive. But even then, she never let her heart grow hard. She still believed in kindness, still believed that people could change her life with a single act, just as she might someday change someone else's. The evening air grew colder, and she pulled out a piece of bread she had saved from earlier that day. It was hard and dry, but it was food, and that was enough. She ate slowly, listening to the gentle sounds of water lapping against the shore. She felt both small and strong at the same time, small because of how wide and uncaring the world seemed, but strong because she had survived another day. When darkness finally covered the lake, she lay down on the grass, using her backpack as a pillow. The stars twinkled faintly above, and the mansion's lights shone in the distance. She whispered softly to herself, "Maybe tomorrow will be better." She didn't know how or when, but she carried the hope like a hidden flame inside her. She closed her eyes, letting the sound of the lake soothe her. She had no idea that very soon, the same quiet water she found comfort in would become the place where her destiny changed forever. The night had fallen deep over the city, and the lake rested in silence, only disturbed by the soft whispers of the wind. She sat close to the water's edge, pulling her jacket tighter against the cold. The world around her seemed quiet, almost too quiet, and the air carried a chill that made her fingers numb. She stared at the water, watching how the moonlight danced upon its surface, turning it into silver ripples. It was then that she heard it. At first, it sounded faint, almost like a bird calling out in the night. But then, the sound grew louder, sharper. "Help me." The voice carried a desperate edge, full of panic. She sat upright instantly, her heart pounding fast. The cry had come from the lake itself. She rushed to her feet, scanning the dark water. At first, she saw nothing, only the black surface stretching wide. But then, a splash broke the stillness, followed by the sight of a man struggling in the middle of the lake. His arms flailed helplessly, rising and sinking again. The sound of water thrashing filled the air. Her breath caught. The lake was freezing, and the distance looked too far. She was weak from hunger, tired from days of surviving, yet she didn't pause to think. Something inside her told her that she couldn't just stand there and watch. Without hesitation, she dropped her backpack to the ground, kicked off her shoes, and ran straight into the water. The cold hit her like knives against her skin, but she pushed forward, forcing herself to swim harder. Her arms cut through the water, her legs kicking with all the strength she had left. She could hear the man's voice fading in and out, sometimes above the surface, sometimes swallowed by the lake. "Hold on," she shouted, though she wasn't sure he could hear her. Her teeth chattered from the cold, but she didn't stop. Each stroke felt heavier, and the weight of her wet clothes dragged her down, yet her will was stronger than her body. She refused to let someone's life slip away in front of her. Finally, she reached him. His face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. He was much bigger than her, and his body moved wildly as panic consumed him. The water splashed around them as he struggled to stay afloat. She grabbed his arm tightly, but he nearly pulled her under with him. For a moment, she felt herself sinking, her lungs filling with fear. "Stop fighting," she gasped, her voice breaking from exhaustion. Somehow, he heard her and stopped thrashing for just a second. Using that moment, she wrapped her arm around him, holding his head above the water. Every inch toward the shore felt endless. Her muscles screamed, and the icy water bit into her skin, but she pressed on. The world around her seemed far away. The only sounds were the gasps of the man beside her and the thundering beat of her own heart. The mansion lights across the lake shimmered faintly, but they looked distant, unreachable. She told herself to focus only on the next breath, the next movement, the next push toward safety. At last, her feet touched the muddy bottom near the shore. Relief flooded her body, but she didn't stop moving. With the last of her strength, she dragged the man out of the water and onto the grass. They both collapsed there, coughing and gasping for air. She lay on her back, staring at the stars above, her chest rising and falling heavily. Her clothes clung to her like ice, and her arms trembled from exhaustion. Next to her, the man struggled to breathe, water dripping from his hair and clothes. He turned his head slowly, his eyes meeting hers. In his gaze was something she hadn't seen in a long time: gratitude. You saved me," he whispered, his voice weak and broken. She nodded faintly, too tired to speak. For her, it didn't matter who he was or what he owned. In that moment, he was just another human being who needed help, and she had done what her heart told her to do. Minutes passed before either of them moved again. The night air grew colder as the water dried on their clothes, making them both shiver uncontrollably. She finally pushed herself up, glancing at him with concern. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. He sat up slowly, holding his chest as he tried to catch his breath. "I think so," he said, still shaken. "If you hadn't been here, his voice trailed off, unable to finish the thought. She gave a small, tired smile. "It's okay. You're safe now." The man looked at her closely, as if trying to understand who she was. Her hair clung wetly to her face, her clothes were thin and worn, and her shoes lay abandoned by the water's edge. She didn't look like someone who had much, yet she had risked everything to save him. "You could have let me drown," he said quietly, almost in disbelief. She shook her head. "No one deserves that," she replied simply. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. The sound of the water lapping against the shore was the only thing that filled the air. The girl turned her eyes back toward the mansion lights across the lake, glowing softly in the distance. She didn't know who this man was or where he lived. To her, he was just another stranger. But the way he looked at her made her feel as if something important had just shifted in both their lives. Finally, he tried to stand, though his legs wobbled. She quickly reached out to steady him. Despite being smaller and weaker, she supported his weight with surprising strength. Together, they made their way slowly toward the path. The night seemed different now. The air felt heavier with meaning, as though the lake had chosen this moment for both of them. She didn't know it yet, but saving that man would open a door she never imagined existed. As they reached the path, he turned to her again. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. It had been a long time since anyone had cared enough to ask. "I'm Anna," she said softly. He gave a weak smile, still shivering from the cold. "Anna. I owe you my life." She didn't reply. Deep inside, she wondered if tomorrow would be the same as every other day, searching for food, sleeping under the open sky. But for now, under the moonlight and the silence of the lake, she knew one thing: her life had just taken a step towards something unknown. The night seemed longer than usual after the struggle in the water. Anna's body still ached from the cold and from the weight of pulling a man much larger than herself out of the lake. Her wet clothes clung to her skin, and the chill of the wind made her shiver, but she ignored her discomfort. She kept glancing at the man she had saved, still not quite believing what had happened. He walked slowly beside her, his steps unsteady. Sometimes his hand brushed against the tree trunks for balance, and Anna stayed close, ready to catch him if he slipped. The quietness between them felt heavy, yet not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that carried unspoken gratitude and relief. Anna had saved strangers before in small ways. She had offered half a piece of bread to another homeless girl once, or shared her spot under the shelter with someone during a storm. But this was different. Tonight, she had pulled someone back from the edge of death. And now, she couldn't help but wonder, who was this man? When they reached the road that curved around the lake, he stopped. He looked exhausted but calmer now, as if breathing the night air was helping him recover. Anna studied his face under the faint glow of a streetlight. His hair was dark and slick from the water, his jawline sharp, and his clothes, though soaked, were of fine material. They didn't look like the clothes of someone struggling to survive. "Thank you again," he said softly, his voice still hoarse. Anna gave a small nod. You should get warm. The night's too cold to stay outside in wet clothes. He tilted his head, studying her carefully. And what about you? You're shivering just as much as I am. She quickly lowered her gaze. She wasn't used to people noticing her, let alone worrying about her. I'll be fine, she whispered. She didn't want to explain that fine meant curling up on a bench with her thin jacket and praying it wouldn't rain. He hesitated, as if trying to decide something. Then he motioned toward the road. Come with me. My house isn't far from here. Anna blinked, unsure if she had heard him right. Your house, she repeated slowly. He nodded, his eyes gentle yet firm. Yes. It's just across the lake. You can't stay like this, you'll fall sick. Across the lake. Anna's heart skipped. She knew exactly what stood across the lake, the massive mansion she had often stared at from a distance. That shining palace of light and warmth that had always seemed so unreachable. She looked at him again, disbelief flooding her chest. Could it be possible? She followed him quietly, each step filling her with curiosity and nervousness. The road curved upward, leading to a wide gate guarded by tall iron bars. Beyond the gate, Anna saw the mansion up close for the very first time. Its walls rose proudly, every window glowing with golden light. Even at night, the gardens surrounding it were carefully kept, lined with trimmed hedges and flowers that seemed to bloom endlessly. Anna froze in place. Her throat tightened. She had sat on the opposite side of the lake countless nights, watching this mansion with distant wonder. Now she was standing right in front of it, about to walk through the gates. The world suddenly felt strange, like she had stepped into a dream. The man noticed her hesitation. He offered a reassuring smile. Don't worry. You're safe here. The gates opened silently, as if the mansion itself had been waiting for him to return. Anna's eyes widened as she stepped inside. The driveway was paved in smooth stone, leading to the grand entrance where tall doors stood polished and proud. Lights glowed along the pathway, casting a soft warmth over everything. Her feet felt heavy, almost reluctant to touch the ground. She had never in her life walked such a path. She almost wanted to turn back, afraid she didn't belong in a place like this. But her curiosity and the man's calm presence urged her forward. When the doors opened, Anna's breath caught. The inside of the mansion was even more breathtaking than she had imagined. The entrance hall was wide and shining, with marble floors that reflected the light of crystal chandeliers above. Paintings lined the walls, their colors rich and alive. A staircase curved upward gracefully, its railing polished like glass. Anna's eyes darted everywhere, taking in details she had only ever seen in magazines left behind at the library. She could smell something faintly sweet in the air, flowers mixed with the warmth of wood. The place radiated comfort, wealth, and safety. She glanced down at herself, at her soaked, thin clothes and muddy shoes. Shame burned in her chest. She felt out of place, like a stray bird that had accidentally flown into a palace. She stepped back slightly, her instinct urging her to retreat. But the man turned to her. His expression wasn't one of judgment, it was soft, grateful, almost kind. Come inside. Don't be afraid. You saved me. The least I can do is offer you warmth. She hesitated but finally nodded, stepping in. As they moved deeper into the mansion, Anna felt the warmth of the place seep into her cold bones. The floor beneath her feet was heated, the air calm and welcoming. They entered a smaller room off the hall where a fire burned gently in a fireplace. The flames glowed, spreading a comforting light across the furniture, large sofas, wooden shelves filled with books, and curtains drawn to keep the cold night out. Sit, he said softly, gesturing toward the couch. Anna obeyed, though she sat carefully, afraid she might dirty the beautiful fabric. Her body trembled as the heat of the fire touched her, chasing away the chill of the lake. She hugged her arms around herself, still unsure if she was dreaming. The man disappeared briefly, then returned with a large towel. Without a word, he handed it to her. She accepted it, murmuring a quiet thank you. As she wrapped herself in it, a strange feeling rose in her chest, something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Safety. He sat across from her, his eyes never leaving her face. I never expected to nearly lose my life tonight, he said, his voice steady now. And I certainly never expected someone like you to save me. Anna looked down, unsure how to answer. I couldn't watch and do nothing, she said quietly. A silence followed, not awkward but meaningful. The fire crackled softly between them, filling the space with warmth. Then the man leaned forward. Anna, he said gently, repeating her name as if he wanted to remember it. This house is mine. I live here. And now you know the truth, I'm not just someone who fell into the water tonight. I'm the owner of the mansion across the lake. Anna's heart raced. She had known it the moment they walked through the gates, but hearing him say it made it real. She stared at him, unsure what to feel, surprise, disbelief, or something else entirely. She had saved the life of a man who lived in the very house she had always looked at with longing. Fate had brought their worlds together in the most unexpected way. And though she didn't know it yet, this discovery would change everything about the days to come. The firelight flickered softly in the quiet room, casting warm shadows across the walls. Anna sat curled on the couch, wrapped in the towel, still unsure if this moment was real. Her body was warmer now, but her heart kept racing. She glanced around, her eyes moving from the tall shelves of books to the polished wooden floor. Everything in the room seemed like a world apart from the one she knew. The man she had saved sat across from her, leaning forward slightly, his hands resting on his knees. His eyes were calm now, though there was still a trace of the shock he had gone through. He hadn't introduced himself properly yet, and Anna didn't ask. It didn't matter what his name was or how much wealth he had. All she could think about was the strange turn her life had taken tonight. He finally broke the silence. You should change out of those wet clothes, he said softly. You'll get sick if you stay like that. Anna hesitated. I don't have anything else to wear. He nodded as if he had already guessed. Standing up, he left the room for a moment, and when he returned, he carried a folded set of clothes, simple but clean. These might be a little big, but they'll keep you warm, he said, placing them gently on the arm of the couch. Anna's fingers touched the fabric, and for a moment, she couldn't speak. She wasn't used to kindness like this. Most days, people avoided her or passed her by without a glance. To be offered warmth and clothes inside a mansion felt unreal. She whispered a soft thank you, her voice trembling slightly. He gave her a reassuring smile. The bathroom is just down the hall. Take your time. Anna stood, still clutching the towel around her shoulders, and walked slowly down the hall. The floor beneath her feet was smooth and warm, the walls lined with artwork she barely understood but admired anyway. She stepped into the bathroom and froze in awe. It was larger than the tiny shelter room she had once slept in, with shining tiles, mirrors that reflected every detail, and a shower that looked like it belonged in a magazine. For a long moment, she just stood there, unsure if she even had the right to touch anything. Then she reminded herself of the lake, of the way she had fought to save his life. Maybe, just for tonight, she could allow herself this kindness. When she returned to the room, dressed in the warm clothes he had given her, she felt different. The fabric was soft, and for the first time in years, she felt dry, comfortable, safe. She sat down again, her damp hair hanging around her shoulders, her eyes lowered. He studied her carefully, not with pity but with a kind of quiet respect. You saved me tonight, he said firmly. And I don't even know why you risk so much. Anna shrugged lightly. I couldn't walk away. Most people would have, he replied. Most people would have called for help or pretended they didn't hear. Anna looked up at him then, her eyes shining in the firelight. I know what it feels like to need help and not get it, she said softly. The room grew still after her words. The fire crackled, filling the silence, and he leaned back, as if realizing there was more to her story than he could see. Anna, he said gently, you don't have to tell me everything, but I'd like to know why were you out there tonight? Alone by the lake. She hesitated. Part of her wanted to stay silent, to keep her story locked inside. But something about the way he asked genuine, without pressure made her feel safe enough to answer. I don't have a home, she admitted in a whisper. Not anymore. I sleep wherever I can. The lake, it's quiet. Safer than some other places. He didn't interrupt. He just listened, his expression calm, his eyes never leaving hers. She lowered her gaze again. People usually don't ask. They look away. You're the first person who's asked me why. A long pause followed. He finally spoke, his voice carrying both sadness and admiration. Then maybe tonight wasn't just about me being saved. Maybe it was about me meeting you. Anna didn't know how to respond. She felt her chest tighten, a mix of emotions swirling inside: surprise, gratitude, disbelief. The hours passed slowly, yet neither of them seemed eager to end the conversation. He asked about small things: her favorite books, her dreams, the places she liked to sit in the city. Anna answered shyly at first, but as the warmth of the fire and his gentle tone wrapped around her, she found herself speaking more freely than she had in years. She told him about the library, how she spent hours there reading old novels, pretending for a little while that she was part of those stories. She spoke of her mother's cooking, of nights filled with laughter before life had turned hard. Her voice softened when she mentioned those memories, but there was always a shadow of loss behind them. He listened without judgment, nodding slowly, sometimes smiling at the way her eyes lit up when she talked about books. Finally, when her voice grew tired, he said quietly, "You're stronger than most people I know. Stronger than me, in fact." Anna shook her head. "I don't feel strong. I just survive." "Surviving takes more strength than you think," he replied. The fire burned lower, and Anna felt her eyelids grow heavy. She hadn't slept in comfort for so long, and the warmth of the mansion made her body relax against her will. She fought to keep her eyes open, embarrassed to fall asleep in front of him. But he noticed and spoke gently. "You should rest. I'll have a room prepared for you." Anna's eyes widened in surprise. "A room? For me?" He nodded as though it were the most natural thing. "Yes. You can't go back out in the cold tonight. Not after what you've done." Her first instinct was to refuse. She didn't belong here, in this mansion, among polished floors and chandeliers. But her body was too tired, and her heart, deep inside, longed for a night of peace. Finally, she gave a small nod. He stood and led her upstairs. The hallways were lined with soft lights, the carpets thick under her feet. He opened a door to a guest room, and Anna stepped inside, her eyes widening again. The bed was large, covered in clean sheets and blankets that looked softer than anything she had ever touched. A lamp glowed warmly on the bedside table, and a window looked out over the lake. For a moment, Anna stood frozen, overwhelmed. She whispered, "This is too much." But he shook his head gently. "No, Anna. It's the least I can do." When he left her to rest, she sat on the edge of the bed, running her fingers over the blanket. Her chest ached with emotions she couldn't name. She had never asked for help, never expected it. Yet tonight, she had not only saved someone's life but also stepped into a world she thought was impossible for her. As she lay down, pulling the blanket over herself, A single tear slipped down her cheek, not from sadness, but from the strange comfort of knowing she was safe, even just for tonight. She closed her eyes, letting herself sink into the softness, whispering silently into the darkness, "Maybe my life is finally changing." The morning sunlight streamed gently through the curtains, casting golden lines across the room. Anna opened her eyes slowly, almost unsure if she was still dreaming. For a moment, she forgot where she was. She stretched her arms, and instead of the hard bench of a bus stop or the cold grass by the lake, her hands touched the softness of a warm blanket. Her heart skipped. She sat up, looking around at the quiet room. The polished wooden furniture, the gentle glow of light, and the neat arrangement of everything reminded her that this wasn't a dream. She had really spent the night in the mansion. For the first time in years, she had slept peacefully. No noise of the streets, no fear of being chased away, no shivering from the cold. Just calm silence and safety. She pressed her palms together, whispering a small prayer of thanks for the unexpected gift of the night. A soft knock on the door startled her. She quickly stood, smoothing her borrowed clothes. The door opened slightly, and the man she had saved stepped inside. He looked different in the morning light, his hair neat now, his clothes fresh and dry. But the gratitude in his eyes remained the same. "Good morning, Anna," he said warmly. "Did you sleep well?" Anna nodded, a shy smile tugging at her lips. "Better than I have in a long time." He stepped closer, carrying a tray with warm food, eggs, bread, fruit, and a glass of milk. The aroma filled the room, and Anna's stomach tightened with hunger. It had been so long since she had seen a meal like this, fresh and full. "This is for you," he said gently, placing the tray on the table by the bed. Her eyes widened. "All this, for me?" He gave a small laugh. "Of course. You deserve much more than this." Anna sat down slowly, her fingers trembling as she picked up the bread. She ate carefully, almost afraid it might vanish if she moved too quickly. Each bite filled her with warmth, and tears pricked her eyes at the simple joy of eating without worry. The man sat nearby, watching her with quiet kindness. "Anna," he said after a moment, "last night, you gave me back my life. If you hadn't been there, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I don't think I can ever repay you fully, but I want to try." Anna swallowed, setting the bread down. "You don't have to repay me. I only did what anyone should do." He shook his head firmly. "No, not everyone would have. You risked everything when you had so little yourself. That means something. I don't want to just thank you. I want to help you." Her eyes widened, and she quickly shook her head. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden," he said softly. "You've given me a chance to live. Now, I want to give you a chance too." The words struck Anna's heart deeply. She had never expected anything in return, never thought anyone would look at her as someone worth helping. For years, she had felt invisible. Now, here was a man who not only saw her but valued her. Over the next few days, Anna stayed in the mansion. At first, she was nervous, walking carefully, afraid she would break something or make a mistake. But the man whose name she finally learned was Daniel treated her with patience. He showed her the gardens, the library, and the large kitchen filled with warmth and light. Anna found herself drawn to the library most of all. The shelves were lined with books of every kind, from old classics to new novels. She would spend hours there, running her fingers over the spines, reading passages, and losing herself in worlds she had always dreamed about. Daniel noticed her love for reading and often brought her books she hadn't seen before. One afternoon, as she sat by the window with a book in hand, Daniel approached quietly. "Anna," he said, "have you ever thought about studying again? Going back to school, maybe even university someday?" Anna froze. The idea seemed far away, almost impossible. "I don't think that's for me," she whispered. Why not? Daniel asked gently. She lowered her gaze. Because people like me, we don't get chances like that. Daniel leaned closer, his voice steady. You do now. You're smart, Anna. You're strong. And I believe you can do anything you set your mind to. Let me help you find that path again. His words planted a seed in her heart. For years, she had only thought of survival. But now, for the first time, she began to imagine a future, not just another cold night or another day of hunger, but real possibilities. Days turned into weeks, and Anna slowly adjusted to this new chapter of her life. Daniel made sure she had clothes, proper meals, and a safe place to stay. But more importantly, he gave her dignity. He never treated her like someone broken or pitiful. He treated her like an equal, someone capable of more. In return, Anna showed her gratitude not with words but with actions. She helped around the mansion, tending the garden, cleaning the library, and even cooking simple meals when she learned her way around the kitchen. She laughed more than she had in years, and her laughter echoed in the halls that had once felt too quiet. One evening, as they walked by the lake together, Anna stopped to look at the water. The surface was calm, reflecting the stars. She remembered the night she had jumped in, the cold water pulling at her, the fear of not making it out alive. And then she looked at Daniel, walking beside her with steady steps. Funny, isn't it, she said softly. This lake almost took your life, but it also gave me mine back. Daniel smiled gently. Life works in strange ways. Anna nodded, her heart full. She realized then that her journey wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about growth, hope, and a future she could finally imagine. She had saved a man from the water, but he had saved her from drowning in despair. Months later, Anna sat in the library, a stack of books beside her. Papers spread out across the desk, applications for school, notes she had written, dreams she had once buried now coming back to life. She worked hard, studying with determination, and Daniel supported her every step of the way. She still visited the lake often. Sometimes she sat on the shore, remembering the girl she once was, the lonely figure with a thin jacket, staring at the mansion from afar. That girl had felt invisible, forgotten. But now, standing on the same shore, Anna knew she was no longer the same. The mansion across the lake was no longer just a distant dream. It had become the place where her second chance began, where kindness met courage, and where hope found its way back into her heart. And as she looked at the rippling water one evening, she whispered to herself with a smile, I was never truly lost. I was just waiting for the right moment to be found.